For generations, the story of Noah's Ark has been told as a tale of one great vessel braving the storm, a lone sanctuary on an endless ocean of judgment. The image is vivid: animals paired 2 by 2, Noah and his family working tirelessly to care for them, and the steady beat of rain falling for 40 days and nights. It is a story cherished for its message of obedience, hope, and divine mercy. Yet what if the story is not quite as solitary as we have imagined? What if, somewhere out there on those vast and chaotic waters, another vessel was moving quietly under the watch of heaven? The thought opens the door to a realm of mystery. It is a question that lingers at the edge of tradition, asking us to look beyond what we have always been told. Could the flood have involved more than one ark? Could another vessel, with a different mission, have sailed through the same storm, carrying a different kind of cargo? Ancient writings, forgotten legends, and scattered clues across cultures may hint at a possibility that is rarely discussed, yet deeply intriguing. This is not about rewriting the story we know, but about expanding our perspective. The Ark of Noah remains the centerpiece of the biblical account, the visible testimony to God's faithfulness. Yet, if God's works are as deep and layered as Scripture often reveals, then it is possible that another vessel played its part, hidden from the common eye, yet essential to the unfolding of history. Psalm 25 verse 14 reminds us that the secret of the Lord is with those who fear Him, suggesting that some truths are intentionally veiled until the right moment. Imagining another ark invites us to see the flood in a new light, not just as a singular rescue, but as a coordinated act of preservation. Perhaps one vessel safeguarded the life of all living creatures, while another preserved sacred knowledge, covenantal objects, or even a remnant of people chosen for a different purpose. If such a vessel existed, it could explain certain mysteries that remain in the aftermath of the flood, such as the rapid return of advanced skills and knowledge to human civilization. Before we dive into this exploration, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss any of our deep dives into the mysteries of Scripture and ancient history. If you enjoy thought-provoking topics like this, give this video a like to help it reach others who share your curiosity. And when you have finished watching, leave a comment with your thoughts. We would love to hear your perspective on the possibility of another ark and what it could mean for the story of the flood. Long before printed pages carried the words of Genesis across the globe, stories of a great flood moved through the tongues of countless peoples. From distant islands to sprawling continents, from desert dwellers to forest tribes, the memory of overwhelming waters and chosen survivors seems to be written into the collective human soul. The Genesis account may be the most widely known in modern times, yet it is far from being the only voice telling of a world washed clean and life beginning anew. In the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, carved into clay tablets and preserved for millennia, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of Utnapishtim, a man forewarned of an oncoming flood. Guided by divine instruction, he built a great vessel, gathered life within it, and endured the storm until the waters receded. Though details differ, the echoes of Noah's story are undeniable. The vessel, the chosen man, the preservation of life, these themes form a thread that crosses cultural boundaries. Traveling westward, ancient Greek tradition tells of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who survived a flood sent by the gods to purge humanity of corruption. They drifted for days until their craft came to rest upon a mountain, from which they descended to repopulate the earth. Far away in the mountains of Peru, Andean myths speak of a few chosen souls surviving in a great container as the waters swallowed the land. Across the Pacific, Polynesian traditions remember ancestors who escaped the flood in canoes, guided by the stars to safety. These are not faint, isolated tales. They are vibrant, repeated testimonies, passed from one generation to the next with the weight of sacred memory. While many interpret them as cultural expressions of the same primal event, others wonder if they point toward something more complex. Could the multiplicity of survivors in these accounts suggest that more than one vessel braved the storm? Could different groups, separated by distance and culture, have preserved their own records of survival, each pointing toward a moment when divine intervention spared more than a single remnant. When patterns appear across civilizations separated by oceans and centuries, the question arises whether these are mere coincidences or fragments of a shared truth. If the Great Flood was as global and devastating as the scriptures describe, then the preservation of life may have unfolded in ways that went beyond the solitary image of Noah's Ark. The ancient legends may be more than distant echoes of one story, they may be pieces of a larger design, suggesting that salvation during the flood might have been more widespread, more diverse, and perhaps more deliberate than we have long assumed. Beyond the familiar pages of the Bible lie texts that, while not part of the canonical scriptures, have been treasured by many communities for their depth, detail, and mystery. These writings, often referred to as apocryphal or extra-biblical, preserve a vision of the ancient world that is both startling and illuminating. Among them, the Book of Enoch stands out as a work filled with vivid descriptions of the pre-flood earth, celestial beings, and the intricate interplay between heaven and humanity. Enoch's account speaks of the Watchers, angels who descended to earth and taught mankind advanced skills and forbidden knowledge. It describes a time when the world was rich in wisdom but also deeply corrupted, when giants walked among men, and when the judgment of God became inevitable. In these narratives, the flood was not only an act of physical cleansing, but also a spiritual reckoning, a reset meant to remove a deep-rooted corruption that threatened creation itself. The Book of Jubilees, another ancient work, adds yet more detail. It outlines the generations before the flood, their customs, their failings, and the warnings they received. Some fragments preserved in these texts speak of things prepared before the waters came, hidden places, preserved writings, and sanctuaries untouched by the flood's reach. While they do not describe these in the same way as Noah's Ark, the implication is that not everything of value was stored in a single wooden structure. Other apocryphal writings, like certain fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, hint at the safeguarding of knowledge and even of individuals apart from Noah's family. These are not direct claims of another ark, but rather suggestions that divine preservation may have extended beyond what the Genesis account openly records. Such hints, scattered across various manuscripts, form a quiet but compelling mosaic. If Noah's Ark was the visible vessel of salvation, perhaps other means of preservation remained hidden by design, entrusted to the unseen care of heaven or to the watchfulness of angels. These hidden manuscripts, though controversial in some circles, invite us to see the flood not only as a singular rescue, but as part of a larger plan. One in which God's preservation of life, truth, and promise might have been carried out through multiple channels, some visible, others veiled in mystery. The thought of a second ark sailing through the same tempest that tested Noah's faith is bold and unsettling, yet it finds whispers in ancient traditions and interpretive writings. While the Bible does not plainly declare its existence, certain rabbinic teachings and early commentaries speak cryptically of other preservations that took place during the flood. These accounts are often veiled, as though protecting the truth too sacred or dangerous to speak openly. Some Jewish traditions speak of a vessel not for animals, but for sacred objects, writings, or even priestly figures whose role would be vital after the waters receded. In this view, the second ark was a kind of sanctuary upon the waters, a place of holiness preserved apart from Noah's family, perhaps overseen by divine messengers or entrusted to a select remnant hidden from the eyes of the world. Gnostic writings and some early Christian thinkers occasionally alluded to the preservation of divine wisdom in forms other than Noah's Ark. While their interpretations varied, a common thread runs through them: the belief that God's plans for salvation and restoration are rarely confined to a single act or a single vessel. Just as the Ark of the Covenant would later hold the tablets of the law, perhaps another ark before it held the seeds of knowledge, covenant, or worship that would be needed in the generations to come. This second ark, if it existed, might never have been meant for public memory. It could have been concealed deliberately, its story erased from common knowledge, so that only those appointed to guard it would know of its existence. Such secrecy would not be without precedent, for the scriptures themselves contain moments when God hides things for a time, revealing them only when the appointed season arrives. The concept challenges our long-held imagery of the flood, but also expands it. It paints a picture of divine preservation as a layered and multifaceted act, where Noah's Ark was one of several means by which the Creator ensured the continuity of life, truth, and covenant after the deluge. In such a vision, the floodwaters were not crossed by one vessel alone, but by a fleet of purpose, seen and unseen, each carrying a portion of the divine plan into the new world. Among the most curious and controversial traditions surrounding the flood is the survival of Og, king of Bashan. While his name appears in the Bible long after the flood, Jewish midrashic writings tell a startling tale of how this giant may have endured the waters. According to these ancient stories, Og did not enter the ark as Noah's family did, nor was he swept away by the waves. Instead, he is said to have clung to the side of the ark itself, sustained by food given to him by Noah through an opening. The image is both strange and thought-provoking, a giant, a remnant of the antediluvian world, riding out the judgment not within a vessel, but upon its very edge. If such a survival were possible, it would suggest that the flood's preservation of life might have included beings we would least expect. Some interpretations see Og's survival as symbolic. The giant becomes a representation of lingering corruption, a reminder that not all that is opposed to God's ways was swept away in the flood. His presence in later biblical history could serve as a testament that judgment does not always erase every trace of the past, and that certain forces endure by divine allowance, perhaps to fulfill a later purpose. Others, however, take the midrash at face value and question how such a feat could have occurred. Would the ark's stability have allowed a passenger on its exterior? Could another vessel have been nearby, aiding Og's survival? This speculation naturally returns us to the possibility that more than one means of preservation existed during the flood, some recorded in scripture, others preserved only in tradition. If Og's survival was real, then the flood narrative may be more complex than we have long imagined. It suggests a world in which the visible Ark of Noah was not the sole stage upon which the drama of judgment and mercy played out. In the shadows of the storm, other survivals may have taken place, each carrying with it a story yet untold. The story of the flood is not only about rising waters and the destruction of the wicked. It is also about the unseen conflict between the forces of heaven and the corruption that had overtaken the earth. Ancient writings like the Book of Enoch describe in detail how certain angels, known as the Watchers, abandoned their appointed stations, descended to earth, and corrupted humanity with forbidden knowledge. Their offspring, the Nephilim, filled the world with violence and defiance toward God. While these fallen beings are often the focus of pre-flood narratives, the faithful angels are rarely discussed in connection to the flood itself. Yet it is reasonable to wonder if they played a role in the preservation of the righteous and the safeguarding of divine purposes. Could they have guided the construction of not only Noah's Ark, but another vessel, one meant for a different kind of cargo? Could they have acted as guardians over something too sacred for human hands to protect? Scripture records angels as messengers, protectors, and agents of deliverance. From leading Lot out of Sodom to shutting the mouths of lions for Daniel, their involvement in moments of crisis is well established. If they were active before and during the flood, their duties may have extended beyond what the Genesis account openly describes. Some traditions speak of heavenly vessels, not made of wood, but of light and glory, moving where they are needed to carry out the will of God. If such a vessel existed during the flood, it may have been beyond the perception of human eyes, carrying within it things destined to shape the future after the waters receded. In this vision, the flood becomes more than a story of one man, one family, and one ark. It becomes a scene of coordinated divine action, where heaven and earth work together to preserve life, truth, and covenant. The Ark of Noah stands as the visible testimony to God's mercy, But perhaps in the realm of the unseen, angels moved with purpose, ensuring that nothing essential to the divine plan was lost to the deep. When the flood came, it was not only human lives that stood on the brink of extinction. The accumulated knowledge of generations, the skills, discoveries, and wisdom of the ancient world was at risk of vanishing beneath the waves. Before the deluge, the earth had been home to advanced understanding in agriculture, architecture, astronomy, and metallurgy. Cities had been built, tools forged, and great works crafted by skilled hands. The flood threatened to wipe away not only the people who held this knowledge, but also the means to recreate it. Yet history after the flood presents a puzzle. Civilizations arose with surprising speed. Monumental architecture appeared again, from the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of Egypt. Systems of writing re-emerged, star charts were drawn, and craftsmanship in metals returned. This rapid reappearance of complex skills raises a question: how did humanity recover so quickly if all knowledge had been lost? Some believe that before the flood, a vessel of wisdom was prepared, containing records, tools, or objects essential for the rebuilding of society. This vessel may not have resembled Noah's Ark at all. It could have been a chest, a sealed container, or even a hidden archive placed beyond the reach of the waters. Others suggest the preservation of knowledge could have been oral, carried in the minds of a chosen few who were given special protection. The ancient Sumerian king list, Egyptian temple inscriptions, and other early records sometimes speak of knowledge from before the waters, passed down through select guardians. If such a preservation occurred, it would explain how humanity could begin again without starting entirely from nothing. Whether this knowledge was stored in a physical vessel or entrusted to supernatural care, the idea reinforces a key pattern. The flood was not simply about judgment, but about preparation for renewal. Just as seeds must be preserved for planting after the harvest, the wisdom to rebuild the world may have been safeguarded for the moment the waters receded. In this way, the preservation of knowledge becomes another kind of ark, one not built to carry flesh and bone, but to carry the blueprint for civilization itself. When reading the scriptures, the image of an ark appears more than once, each time at a moment when something precious must be preserved from danger. The Ark of Noah carried life itself through the waters of judgment. Generations later, the Ark of the Covenant held the tablets of the law, Aaron's rod, and a jar of manna, symbols of God's covenant, leadership, and provision. Even the basket that carried the infant Moses down the Nile is described using the same Hebrew word for ark, a vessel sealed against the waters to protect what God had chosen. These repetitions are not accidents. Each ark is a container of preservation, a boundary between chaos and what must endure. In every instance, the ark exists in a time of threat, whether from a flood, an enemy, or the peril of infancy. And in every instance, the ark emerges safely to fulfill its purpose. This pattern suggests a deeper principle. When God preserves what is sacred, He may do so in more than one way at the same time. The preservation of life, law, promise, and destiny may require multiple vessels, each designed for a particular role. If this principle holds true, then the flood could easily have involved more than one ark, each safeguarding a different aspect of God's plan for the future. The plural nature of arks across Scripture also invites reflection on the way God works. Salvation is not always confined to one method, one moment, or one person. Just as the Ark of Noah was accompanied in history by other vessels in different ages perhaps, the flood's great act of preservation was accompanied by another ark, silent, hidden, and serving a role no less vital than the one we know so well. By recognizing the pattern of arks in plural, we begin to see the flood narrative not as an isolated event, but as part of a larger tapestry in which God repeatedly creates ways to protect what must survive. This recurring theme strengthens the possibility that another vessel may have sailed the floodwaters alongside Noah's, fulfilling a parallel mission unknown to most. If another vessel truly sailed the floodwaters, why does the Bible not speak of it openly? The answer may lie in the way divine truth is sometimes veiled. Throughout Scripture, God reveals certain mysteries gradually, in symbols, or to select individuals. Jesus often spoke in parables, so that only those with hearts ready to receive could understand. Daniel was told to seal up certain visions until the appointed time. John, in the Revelation, was commanded not to write down some of what he heard. A hidden vessel could have been concealed for similar reasons. If it carried knowledge, sacred objects, or a remnant meant for a specific time, revealing it too early could have placed it in the wrong hands. Some truths are safeguarded precisely because they are too precious to be exposed to the corruption of the world. In addition, the focus of the Genesis account is on God's covenant with Noah and all living creatures through him. The existence of another ark might have distracted from the central purpose of that covenant story. By keeping the second vessel in shadow, the Scriptures preserve the clarity of Noah's mission while allowing the other ark's role to remain known only to those entrusted with it. The concept of divine concealment is woven into the fabric of biblical history. Sacred things are often hidden in plain sight or buried until their season arrives. The temple's most holy items were kept behind the veil, seen only by the high priest. The location of Moses' burial was never revealed. Perhaps the second ark story, if true, was hidden not because it was unimportant, but because it was sacred beyond measure, its unveiling reserved for a moment when its purpose would be fully understood. In recent centuries, explorers, archaeologists, and researchers have scoured the mountains and valleys of the Near East in search of evidence for the Great Flood. Mount Ararat in Turkey, long held in tradition as the resting place of Noah's Ark, has yielded reports of wooden structures embedded in ice, curious formations seen from the air, and local legends passed down for generations. Some claim to have seen beams or chambers. Others dismiss these as natural formations. The mystery remains unresolved. Yet discoveries are not limited to Ararat. In the Black Sea region, underwater archaeological work has revealed evidence of ancient shorelines submerged suddenly, suggesting a massive flood event. In Mesopotamia, layers of sediment consistent with a great inundation have been found in ancient city ruins. Fossil beds in diverse parts of the world contain vast collections of creatures that appear to have been buried suddenly, as if by water and sediment. Alongside physical evidence, myth and oral tradition continue to preserve flood memories across cultures. Some stories, little known outside their native regions, speak not of one, but of several vessels that endured the waters. These tales, often dismissed as folklore, may contain fragments of truth overlooked by modern scholarship. Some researchers suggest that if a second ark existed, it might never be found in the same way as Noah's. Its purpose could have kept it far from the public eye, perhaps in a location chosen for secrecy rather than survival alone. Others believe that any physical remains would have long since decayed, leaving only the stories and the enduring patterns in Scripture as clues. While conclusive proof may remain elusive, the convergence of ancient texts, geological evidence, and cross-cultural traditions keeps the question alive. Modern discoveries, instead of closing the matter, often deepen the mystery, reminding us that the flood narrative may be larger, richer, and more layered than the familiar image of a single ark resting on a mountaintop. The question of whether another ark sailed through the waters of the flood is more than a matter of historical curiosity. It is a reminder that the ways of God often reach farther than human sight. The idea that more than one vessel could have been part of his plan speaks of abundance in preservation, of layered protection, and of a salvation that works in both visible and hidden ways. Whether the second ark carried people, sacred objects, or knowledge, its possible existence points to a truth repeated throughout Scripture. God's care is never limited to a single channel. He provides in ways seen and unseen, through vessels public and vessels hidden, ensuring that what He cherishes will endure. This truth is as relevant now as it was in the days of Noah. We may not face a flood of waters, but each life encounters storms of its own, moments when what is precious to us, seems at risk of being swept away. In such times, the example of Noah's Ark and the possibility of another hidden vessel encourage us to trust that preservation can come from more than one direction. What we see may be only part of the plan, and unseen means of rescue may be moving quietly on our behalf. The image of multiple vessels also reminds us that we ourselves can be carriers of what is sacred. Just as an ark shields its cargo from destruction, we are called to guard truth, protect life, and carry forward the values that align with God's heart. Each act of kindness, each defense of what is right, each moment of faithfulness becomes a small vessel in the great ocean of history, bearing light through the darkness. Even if the second ark remains a mystery, the lesson it suggests is clear. Divine preservation is vast, multifaceted, and often beyond our full understanding. It is a truth that invites both humility and hope. Humility, because we cannot always see the full picture. Hope, because we can trust that God is working in ways far greater than we imagine. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mysteries of the flood and the possibility of the hidden vessel. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, remember to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss future investigations into the deep truths of history and Scripture. Give this video a like to help it reach others who might be searching for the same answers. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear your perspective on the possibility of another ark and what it might mean. And most importantly, share this video with your friends and family so they too can be part of the conversation and discovery.